I'll look this way. Hey,
Hey, buddy, how are you?
I'm good, mate. How are you?
Good, mate. Look at the new Iron Tribe weightlifting office and
Ooh, look at
surrounds.
that. I
Uh,
know it's not 100% done yet, and a special shout out to Madeline Connor on the design. There's a plug for you, Maddie.
good.
The thousands and thousands of Married to My Macros listeners.
Yeah, fantastic. So, not the only change going on in your life right now, buddy.
No, not at
So,
all.
for anyone that listens to the
Try to
more,
kill a virus on the loose. We have a newborn baby on the loose.
yeah. So there you go. I mean, you heard it here first. Many moons ago when we announced the pregnancy.
You did actually, yeah.
Exclusive to the More Than
Yeah.
Macros podcast.
Yeah, absolutely.
And now we're catching up for, I guess, I guess it's been basically 7 months since we sat down, and now the new father of a 1-week-old baby.
Yeah, 6 days.
6 days. And for anyone wondering on the gender, Chris is one of the. I reckon you're like in the minority now of people who are still going the old-fashioned route of wanting to be surprised on the day. Do you think?
We didn't know, yeah. Even when she was sitting on Tracey's chest for the first 5 minutes, we didn't know.
Yeah, so there you go. So you've had a beautiful baby girl, Scarlett.
It's Scarlett, yeah.
Awesome,
Gorgeous.
mate. Congratulations.
Thank you, yeah. You're soon.
Now, I've obviously been teasing you for a number of months that you were having a baby girl, and
You ruled it.
the one theory that we predicated that on, if anyone has any wives' tales about how to tell gender, I'm super interested, because we've come up with a theory that's yet to be proven wrong. And that seems to be that your firstborn baby is the same gender as your dog, if you have a dog. And that has not failed us yet, even in our case, having a little girl. So that still holds true, that theory, which I was pretty confident in. But Chris, like me, lots of friends having boys. So it's kind of nice to feel like we're in this together, bruv.
We are, mate. Yeah, I've two of my two good mates of mine. They've just had boys in the last 12 months, so I've already messaged them and told them to keep their filthy boys away from my daughter.
Yeah, I think it's going to go those first steps and straight into a gi and straight into jiu-jitsu, right?
100%. Yeah, Uncle Jace will be definitely teaching her all the ways of the jiu-jitsu, that's for sure.
Awesome, mate. Well, thanks for finding some time. No doubt it's been pretty crazy the last 6 days. Plenty of change and plenty of adjusting going on. Anyway, let alone with having a baby girl into the mix.
On top.
I guess, look, there's been obviously a bit of a theme in the last couple of months with guests that we've had on and chats about parenthood and fatherhood, and I guess what to expect and how to prepare. So I thought it was like, who better to ask than someone who's like right in the midst of that, like week one, right?
And a rookie is all hell first.
Yeah, exactly. Well. Really, brand new to it and no prior experience, which is exactly what I'm heading into. So, hey, give us. I mean, do you want to give us a background? Do you want to take us through, I guess, a little bit the day of, the lead up into, and then we'll kind of get to the more like day-to-day kind of practical stuff as we get to that point.
So the pregnancy was minus the first, I think, 16 weeks, or 8 to 6, from week 8 to week 16. Tracey had horrible morning sickness, but after that, she kind of really hit her stride, and it was just a kind of pregnancy from heaven. She looked gorgeous the whole way through. She loved every minute of it from that point on, which was really, really cool. She was looking forward to the labor. She was looking forward to the whole experience, which was cool. And then, so we ended up having Scarlett 38 weeks in 1 day. So she was kind of early to me. I've always heard that anything up to 38 weeks is on time, but we still hadn't actually planned for her to come that early. I had a bunch of things to kind of get done. And on the Wednesday night, if you're watching this in the distant future and we still have a society, we'd just gone into isolation. The gym had shut. The gym had shut at midnight Wednesday night, and then Thursday morning, the second time in 4 or 5 bloody months. And so I'd had a pretty hectic few days kind of organizing equipment and getting all that type of stuff sorted. And to be honest, like it's going to be hard. The business will kind of struggle to some extent. We've got an amazing community, so we're not going to disappear anytime soon, but I had a lot to kind of do, and the isolation period was kind of like, well, this could be hugely beneficial. This will provide me with an opportunity to spend time with my child. At the time, I didn't know boy or girl. But I still had a bunch of things I wanted to tick off before week 40, before she arrived. And everyone always tells you, and everyone knows everything, right? Like, you know, oh, it's definitely a boy because you're carrying this way, or it's definitely a girl because you're doing this, or it's
because your dog's a girl.
Because your dog's a girl. Oh, yeah. Well, I can't say yours because yours is obviously right.
Yeah.
And then like, everyone says you go over the first one, and we've had a couple of girls here recently. One was bang on the birth date, on the due date. One went about 8 days over from memory. And so I was preparing for another 2 weeks of getting stuff done around the house, preparing some food to stick in the freezer, all that type of jazz. And then Thursday morning, the day before Scarlett arrived, about 5:30, Tracey started having contractions. And the last couple of weeks, she'd already had some kind of form of contraction, but nothing like this. And then so...
Does she know? Was she like, hey, like, this is it? This is...
No, because her sister had something very similar 2 weeks before she gave birth. So she was kind of thinking they were like Braxton Hicks or fake contractions or whatever you want to call them. And so what ended up happening was, normally Tracey gets quite uncomfortable in the middle of the night anyway. And so she would just go and have a bath, and I would just sleep through and have no idea what was going on. And she wouldn't really wake me. And every now and then I'd wake up with her, especially early on. But towards the end, my body clock was just like ignoring what was going on that side of the bed. And then for whatever reason, she was super uncomfortable. 5 days, she's like, no, this is not a negative. This doesn't feel right, but this isn't what I've experienced yet. Yeah. And then so they started, and they were probably like, I don't know, 10 minutes apart for a few hours. And we were like, oh, is this it? Is this not it? Then they stopped roughly around 1 o'clock for about an hour or two. Forget what it was. And then, so what ended up happening was they came back, and they were still quite a big distance apart. And so we were starting to think, okay, so this could be it. So we actually started preparing the house. So anyone that knows Tracey knows that she has a list of things that she likes to get done, and in a particular order as well, where I am the polar opposite person, as you can tell by leaving some of my jobs to the last 2 weeks before baby was born. And so some of the things that she had on our to-do list, I'd watched about 3 birthing classes with her during the isolation the first time, and there was about 9 or something. I hadn't quite caught up. But Tracey'd watched them all, and she'd written notes on all of them, and our goal was to sit down and kind of write the notes. So she's having contractions, and I filmed it because I was like, no one's going to believe me. She thought it was more important. The 2 things she wanted to get done that day before baby came was she wanted me to sit down with her and write down the notes that she'd already written, but like write it on a piece of paper so we could print it off. And 2 was to vacuum her car so we could put the pram and stuff in it and prepare for baby. They're the 2 things she wanted done while she was having contractions. And I'm like, trying to calm her down, put the candles on, calming music. And she's like, I've got to get this done. So we ended up kind of when the contraction stopped, I was like, I need to sleep. I've been up. We hadn't really had much sleep. Like I said, the gym had shut. I think I'd probably gotten to bed at like 1 o'clock, and she was up at 5:30. So I took about an hour nap, and that was when they'd probably kick back in. So yeah, it was probably about an hour break. And then they started getting closer and closer and closer. And then at about 10 o'clock, they're about 2 minutes apart. And that's normally when they say it's time to go to the hospital. We've been on the phone. What's that?
Yeah, time to go, yeah. And
so one thing that Tracey has been really big on the whole pregnancy is she wanted it to come, and this is through one of the classes that we'd done. She didn't want to get taken out of that moment so that all the normal stuff that's happening stops, because she starts going into like the hospital and, all the rigmarole of what kind of happens and procedures and stuff like that. So she wanted to do it as late as possible so that it was kind of like we're kicking goals. We're in, a couple hours later, labor starts, a couple hours later, baby's here type thing. And so that was our kind of game plan. So we wanted to stay as home as long as possible. And we've been off and on the phone, just letting the nurses, the midwives know that we were possibly coming in and what was going on. And so we called them at about 10 o'clock saying we were roughly 2 minutes apart. And they said, okay, cool. So you could potentially labor at home a little longer, but you're definitely welcome to come in, like probably now come in type thing. So we gave it another couple of hours, and I think we got there at about 1 o'clock in the morning. They were starting to get quite large, and the 2 minutes, it would go away, but it would come back as well. So it'd blow out to like 5 minutes for 2 in a row, and then it'd come straight back down in 2 minutes.
You can just see
So
Coach Ackers there with a stopwatch.
Oh, we had an app. We had an app. I loved it. It's like pushing the button. And like, it was really cool setting. Like, I'm glad we got some photos of it and some videos of it, because her goodie bag, everything was planned. Like again, like you wouldn't believe. We had the bag with the labor bag, which had the smelling oils in it, and all that kind of positive kind of energy that you want to bring to when you're in excruciating amounts of pain. And then so we go to the hospital, and on my list of things that Tracey wanted me to look after was making sure that we didn't have too many examinations that weren't necessarily needed, that the jargon was going to get mainly spoken to me, and then Tracey could just concentrate on her breathing and things like that, and then we would just come in and tell her what she kind of needed to know. And so I'm already like, they're going to just think I'm the most controlling bloke in the world, like, don't talk to her, talk to me type thing. Like, so anyway, we went in. What's that?
Which you are.
Not to Tracey. Tracey's the boss, mate. Everyone knows that. And so we go in, and the first two things they wanted to do was put an ECG on her, or whatever it's called, and do an internal. And the two things that she didn't really want. She knew she had to have at least one internal just to kind of see how far dilated she was. And then she was kind of hoping the process was just going to take care of itself. So I failed miserably in the first 3 seconds that we were in the hospital. Not that she said anything, and she was fine with it all. And so anyway, they did the internal, and she was 4 centimeters, and the membrane mucus plug had gone, or whatever had come out, whatever it's called. And so we were like, hell yeah, 4 centimeters, like 1 more centimeters, and technically we're in active labor.
Yeah.
This is the bomb, right? Like, we're knuckling each other in between contractions. Like, yeah, she had to have a couple of things on, but the nurse was pretty good all in all. Like, and so they took us through to the labor room, and the labor room at Frankston Hospital was just gorgeous. Epsom salt, whatever it is, candle or light, I should say. And so we got the room set up so that Tracey could, just depending on where she was at what time, either bounce on the ball, be on the bed, be in the shower, just kind of bounce wherever she felt that was beneficial for her at that time. And that would have been about 1:30 by that time.
So for anyone listening, that's called active labor, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like get up, move around, just try to stay comfortable. Yeah.
Yeah, try to and the problem was with what Tracey found was wherever she was when the contraction started, that was how she kind of had to stay. So like, if she was on the ball, that was sick, she could stay on the ball. If she was halfway in between getting to the ball, she wasn't going down to the ball. She was standing back up and just kind of, I was holding her hand and holding her arm, or whatever it was at the time.
Sounds like when you cramp, right? It's like when you get a cramp that you're not expecting.
100%. Mate, it was just the pain, because we were like where we were. It was like 1:30 in the morning. We're like, I called my mum, or I think I texted my mum, like, hey guys, just to give everyone a heads up, we're at the hospital. We're about 4 centimeters dilated. Bubs could be here in the next couple of hours. We were legitimately thinking we're not far away from baby here. And then so 3 o'clock rolls around, 4 o'clock rolls around, 5 o'clock rolls around. And then I think at like about 7 o'clock, right before the nurse's shift ended and we had the new nurse come in, she went and got the doctor, just so that the doctor, because you actually give them, we gave them out. We didn't call it a birth plan. We just called it a birth preference list, where it was kind of like, this is what we would like. But along with those, kind of what we wanted was also like 100%, if medical intervention is good, do your thing, right? But it was like, if not, please no. And they were really good with it. Other than that first time, the first nurse asked a couple of things, which we kind of declined. And this is obviously from my perspective, because Tracey has a completely different memory of it all. So during that process,
we should do a catch-up episode with Tracey and be like, and we got Ackers. We're just trying to put the two stories together. Yeah.
So like, Tracey doesn't remember much of it. Obviously, I could, as you could imagine, being in and out of kind of pain and things like that. But by this stage, about 3 or 4 in the morning, we're almost up for 24 hours at this stage. And Tracey's been up for 24 hours and in some level of discomfort / pain, whereas I'd been up for 24 hours and fine. So like, I'm standing there holding her sometimes, like, nodding asleep while she's on the bed in some instances, or I'm holding her, falling over. And it was like, and like you couldn't, there was no stopping to take naps or anything like that. It was just go the whole time. And so before the nurse finished her shift, we didn't know she was finishing that stage. She went and got a doctor, and the doctor came in. She's basically, they're like, "Can we please do another internal? It should have progressed by now. Heaven forbid we do the internal and you're still at 4 centimeters. You'll just be gutted. If there's some way we can kind of speed this thing along, would you like it?" And by this stage, Tracey's like, "Hell yeah." So they do the internal. We'd only gone from 4 to 5 centimeters in the space of like 5 hours, 6 hours at this stage. And then so they asked if they could rupture the membrane, so break her waters. And so they did that. And how they kind of explained it was that we initially at about 36 weeks, we had to go on 36 weeks, we had to get a scan because Tracey was measuring quite large. So they were either worried that baby was a couple of weeks ahead, or they just wanted to see what was going on. It turns out baby wasn't super large, like she was in the 90th percentile or whatever, but she was carrying a lot of water, because anyone who saw Tracey, she was carrying very high and almost looked like she was having twins from the front especially. And so the way the nurse and the doctor explained it was that the head had started to move, but it had pushed a big ball of water kind of down as well. And so it couldn't get through it to start active labor even further.
Yeah.
So from the time they ruptured the membrane, which was 7 o'clock, it was 7 o'clock in the morning, about 3.5 hours later, baby was there.
Yeah.
And like the contractions got way more intense. I've never seen so much liquid in my life. Like they took about 6 towels to clean it up. But it really, really sped the process up. That 3 hours didn't feel like 3 hours. It didn't feel like 3 hours for me. It probably felt like forever for Tracey. And then the nurse had swapped at that stage right as she broke it. And then the new nurse came in, and it couldn't have worked out better because the other nurse was like very like meh. The new nurse came in and she was very kind of like, "You can do this. You're amazing." And she was really preparing Tracey for the stages that she was going to go through during birth. Like at this stage, you're probably going to doubt that you can do this, and you're going to want to start the push. We can't have you pushing then. We need you to hold on to that. Eventually, it's going to come to a point where you cannot ignore that push. That is when I want you to push. And so that happened. And then Tracey, when we did start to push, I don't know if she pushed the button or what, but within the space of that, what's that? No. Oh yeah. Well, you've got to say it like that. You're on the team. Definitely wasn't me, but when they pushed the button, within the space of 2 minutes, there was like 12 people in the room.
Yeah.
And they're all talking really calm. This is fine. Everything's fine. Everything's great. When everyone's telling you everything's great, everything's not great. And so Tracey's like, she's just concentrating on pushing and herself. And then so this doctor came in and the head midwife came in, and they were just rock stars. They explained it in the simplest terms. And they'd actually asked, "Hey, can we put a thing on baby's head to check its heart rate? Because the monitor that we'd had on, it's telling us the baby's heart rate's dropping. And we can't have that." And Tracey had been on the phone to one of her good friends, we'll call her her best friend, to one of her best friends that night. And they'd been talking about this exact thing. And what they actually do with that thing is they screw it, or they put it underneath the skin of the scalp. And Tracey didn't want that for Bubs. So she's like, when they asked, she said, "Please, if you can avoid it, please avoid it." And she's like, "Okay, cool. That's fine. I'm telling you now, but if baby's heart rate drops below this, it's going in." And Tracey's like, "That's fine. That's no worries." And so Tracey was not worried at all. And I'm like, this person's talking about my baby heart rate dropping. The nurse who was on the clock is now not on the clock. She's over here. They've got another nurse on the clock. There's 2 doctors over there. There's a doctor over here. What the hell's kind of going on? And then so they started preparing for an episiotomy. And then the nurse who was like really positive and was telling Tracey what to expect was pretty much filling Tracey in that, "So Tracey, we're going to have to deliver this baby that normally takes around an hour to come. We're going to deliver it in about 10 minutes. And so they were starting to prepare for an episiotomy. They were starting to prepare for certain things that were just not on the list. So we didn't want them if we could avoid them. And so, like I said, the doctor, she was an absolute rock star. She was very commanding with what she was doing, but in a very like not in like a drill sergeant way, and just so this is just what's happening, and we're like, you'll be fine. And basically, we had to get the vacuum out, and they put it on baby's head. Didn't need to put the thing underneath the scalp, which was fine. And because she was going to give her an episiotomy, but because Tracey was supposedly pushing so well and taking instructions really, really well, they said to her, we think we can avoid it. We're going to put the vacuum on the head, but you're going to deliver the baby. The only time I'll take over is if you stop listening to instructions, basically. And so what they meant by that was they got to push really, really hard. And then when it gets to the canal, I think it is, before it gets to the vagina, they get to that point, and then they're like, we need you to breathe through this one. So it was like not really hard pushes, because you need to go slow through that section, and then you can kind of push hard again. And that was when they had the vacuum on the head, and the way she explained it was, I'm steering, but you're guiding. And then so eventually, once Bub's head was out, so first it crowned, and then once Bub's head was out, she practically fell out. Like with the guidance of the vacuum and with Tracey's pushing, and you literally like fallen out, and you've got two nurses and a doctor grabbed her, and the head midwife had just pretty much grabbed her and just gone boom, straight on Tracey's chest, put the blanket over her, and then she was there. And it was like every emotion you could possibly feel over 9 months, like that you probably just ignored for 9 months, slaps you straight in the face. And it was the coolest thing ever. And at first, I assumed it was a boy. She had this like screwed up face, and it was like, that looks like an 80-year-old man. Yeah, it looked like an 80-year-old man. And
plus they've been in water for 9 months too, right? Like if you think when you bath for like half an hour,
your skin, 100%. And so I was like, it's a boy. And so everybody knew that we didn't know the sex, and no one had a chance to see it, because she'd come out from the time her neck, the head had come through. She came out quite quickly, and got put on the chest so fast. And so the head midwife's like, do you want to find out sex? Absolutely do. Turns out girls' vaginas are quite swollen when they come out. And so I saw it, and I was like, I saw what I thought was testicles, and I saw a giant umbilical cord. So I'm like, it's a boy. Yeah. And it was a girl. So, and that was how kind of Scarlett came into the world.
Nice.
Yeah. Crazy, man. It was just, Tracey said she's ticked off the bucket list. She had no pain medication whatsoever. She didn't have anything at home. She didn't have the epidural. She didn't have the gas. She didn't have anything like that. And she's glad that she did do it. But she's like, tick, give me the epidural next time. That is just out of this world.
Yeah. Nice. I can imagine. Is it that point where like the first cry where you just kind of get that like emotional kind of dump at that point?
Yeah, and especially because like I was just trying to hold it together, because when they had that many people in the room, like I wasn't crazy worried, but when they had that many people in the room and they were talking of baby's heart rate dropping, I was like waiting for them to move me out of the way, because they're also talking about the episiotomy as well. They're like, we got to get this thing out of her. But they were doing it in such a positive way. I think that's what kept me from really like losing my shit. Tracey was not worried at all. When I talked to her afterwards, she was like, I didn't even realize there was that many people in the room. Like I was so concentrated on the nurse that was on the left of me and the doctor that was in front of me. Okay. I just focused on their words. So they crushed it. Like the staff that we had and the service that we had at Frankston Hospital, 10 out of 10. Like we literally couldn't fault everyone from the time we walked in to time Bubs come out. So, and then so we had skin to skin, or Tracey had skin to skin contact for like, I don't know, 2 hours before they got her off her chest. Mm-hmm. And then Tracey got to go have a shower, and then I got to have skin to skin contact for around half an hour, 45 minutes. And it was just the coolest thing ever.
Yeah. Nice. So, I mean, I guess that's probably the most surreal part, right? Where it's like, until that point, it's like you just keep sort of seeing your misses get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, there's a baby, right?
It is even now.
Anything like the scans, right? Like when you know what baby looks like based on an ultrasound, but until it actually comes out, you're like, nah, it's a mini person.
The thing that is like the pinch yourself thing is, I'll walk into a room and, oh my God, there's a baby there. What the hell?
Yeah. I guess
you're like, look at her and you're like, oh my God, I'm really in charge of you right now.
So you ended up like leaving that night, right? Because that's when you called us, and I guess that's kind of the whole kind of COVID kicker in the situation too. Is that you kind
My
of,
understanding with public hospitals is dad has to leave anyway. Unless you're in a single room, dad has to leave. And we're in a double room. Even though there wasn't someone in there, they're like, sorry, like you kind of got to go. The first night was fine because Tracey got a fair bit of sleep, baby got a bit of sleep, and I got a bit of sleep as well. Because neither of us had kind of slept for a long time.
day and a half, yeah.
But the downside was that the COVID restrictions before COVID, dad could be there 8 in the morning, 8 or 9 in the, I think it was 8 in the morning till 9 at night.
Yeah.
9 at night, something like that, like 13 hours. No, nothing, no questions. That day, as I was leaving or before I left, they explained that due to COVID, and all the nurses walk around in masks now, which they don't normally have to do. I had to wear a mask when I wasn't in the room with Tracey. That restrictions now meant that as the dad, I could only be there 1 till 3 in the afternoon, go home for 2 hours, come back 5 till 7.
Yeah.
Which was fucking bizarre to me because, all right, stay there for 2 hours, that's fine. Now go home. If you need petrol, if you need things like that, yeah, for sure, stop and get your essentials. I mean, you might catch it, and then you can bring it back. You know what I mean? Like, keep me there for that 4 hours at the very least. So it's 1 in, 1 out. But it wasn't the nurses. They were just like, this is just what the rules are type thing.
Yeah.
And even then, the second day when I did go back, I went back at 1. I just didn't leave.
Yeah. I think that's...
No one came around, you didn't see me. Like, it was fine.
That's sort of kind of where my head is at a little bit too. I mean, look, I'm sure like there's a little bit of discretion there on their behalf. Like if you have, I think for us at Box Hill, I think it's like 8 till 8 is visiting hours, right? But I'm sure if you go in and by the time you have the baby, it's like 6:30, 7 p.m. They're not going to come around an hour later and be like, all right, you're out of here, right?
100%.
So yeah. Okay, cool. So then when I guess the next kind of milestone is like time to pack it up and leave the hospital and come home for the first time with baby. How's that? Pretty like surreal again?
Yeah, putting her in the baby seat was like, how do you put a baby in a child seat? That was surreal. Her driving home, it just always felt like someone was going to stop you and be like, whoa, where do you think you're going with that baby, right? Like, and then you get home and you put her in the bassinet, and obviously that first 2 or 3 days, they just sleep the whole time. So it's like you're waiting for this wave to kind of come of like jobs to do, things to do. And like, there isn't really a ton to do other than help Tracey feed when she feeds and then change the diaper and then put her back to bed at the moment. So 6 days in, like not the hardest part, the most interesting part has been the fact that during the day she feeds, like she's taken really well. Everything's gone really well feeding wise, other than obviously the pain that comes with a small infant grabbing on your nipples.
How are you coping with that?
Oh man, it's been so tough. She, every 3 hours, and then at night, every hour on the hour. So from like 1 o'clock, I think it was the first night we were home, which was not bad because I was there that first night. So like what we would do is Tracey would feed, I would take her, I would change her, and then I'd bring her back. I'd settle her, and then I'd put her in the bassinet and she'd sleep. And then half an hour later, we would do the same thing. Because by the time the feed starts and finishes and you've changed her, that's already half an hour, and she was on the hour. But the first night Tracey had to deal with that in the hospital by herself, which was kind of frustrating from like a dad's point of view, where you're like, I'm just fucking at home. I can't really sleep anyway. All I want to do is go back to the hospital. Yeah. So that was kind of frustrating. But so like Tracey like really struggled. I got a phone call at like 7 o'clock in the morning and she's like, I still haven't slept. So that was a hard phone call to kind of get. And then I wasn't even allowed to go back to the hospital till 1 o'clock either. So it was kind of like, that was kind of frustrating. But then the next day, obviously, the day after that, we were allowed to go home. And so we came home, and then so I think Tracey found that first night much easier because the second night had been like, dragged her through hell a little bit. And then I got to help her with that. And then over then she's gotten better. Last night was her best night. She actually slept 4 hours through the night last night. Problem was this guy didn't sleep during that 4 hours. He just couldn't sleep. I settled it. So Tracey fed her, changed her, I settled her. I just froth having her on my chest, especially like, it's the coolest thing ever. Like I could sit there 4 hours, not doing anything with just her sitting on my chest, nestled in. It's the coolest thing ever. And so I normally have done that the last few nights just to kind of settle her because I wanted to fall asleep so I can put her in the bassinet so that she doesn't stir until the end of that hour because it's been slowly getting bigger. And then last night, I settled her. She fell asleep. And I pulled my phone out and then I started Googling things. And next minute, my Wayne's wired. I'm thinking of all these things I want to do, house-wise, work-wise. So then I put her down. And then I go to bed, I'm like this, I can't sleep now. So then I went to the couch, I started watching X-Men First Class, realized, what am I doing? You got to go back to the first one. So I went back to X-Men #1 and started watching X-Men #1 at like 2:00 in the morning.
Nice.
But yeah, so I think we're starting.
This is all helping my play for PS5, by the way. So yeah, keep it going.
100%. Like, I think also, I don't know. It's been fine. Like that is probably the most interesting part. But we've also been really our day is completely upside down now. So like yesterday morning, I woke up at 11:00 in the morning. So I had lunch at 6 p.m.
Sorry, Kat's in a battle with the postie because they keep, even though we're here, they don't drop packages off. They just like leave the mail in the letterbox that they've tried to call and there was no one home. So Kat's Kat's been running out to like meet the post office lady so that she doesn't do that. And she just was like coming through the gate all confused. But anyway, it looks like Kat's won another battle, so we'll chalk that one up.
That's awesome. Wait, that's one of the things that really grinds my gears here.
So you reckon? You're like waiting for a package. Now I have to go to the post office on a Saturday when there's limited hours to like pick it up. I hate that.
You know what kills me? The other day, I was so angry because like the other day we were in isolation.
Yeah.
And I've been really looking forward to this package. I got a text message at like 10 o'clock. Your package is on its way and it'll arrive at approximately 11 a.m. So I'm sitting there all excited, 10 to 11. The driver is not far away. Next minute, the driver has said you are not home. Please pick your package up from this address. So I called the number or the TNT or whoever was the delivery service and just went to town. And I'm like, are you kidding me right now? Nobody came to my door. They just literally put a slip in it. But anyway, that's beside the point.
Yeah, but it is. It gives me shits.
It's the worst, man. And this is my first thing with my dad. I'm with Kat on this one. And my downside is I can't see the letterbox, so they're lucky.
Yeah. See, we got a perfect view straight up the garden. So
I'd just be banging on the window if they don't do it. What are you doing out here? Put it in the letterbox. Yeah.
And then the dog obviously sleeps right there too. So it's like you invite them in for the dog to go ape shit at them when they come.
I wouldn't come into your house either with a dog.
Anyway, one thing I want to kind of circle back to, so this is kind of ongoing discussion in our house at the moment, is the actual bag that you're like taking with you when you go. So there's a big discussion here about like how many onesies we're gonna need, and Kat, every time she goes like to Kmart, she comes back with like another $5 onesie, just in case. Like we have so many clothes and that sort of stuff, and now she's like, oh, I haven't really decided on the outfit that I wanted to wear home from the hospital and like all the rest of it. If you were going to pack the bag, so you know, I don't know if you and Tracey probably a little bit earlier to start talking about the second kid, but you know, the next time you kind of go through this process, like, is there anything with the knowledge, the hindsight that you have, would you be like, oh, probably don't need this, that, and the other, probably focus more here or there?
I think I haven't talked to Tracey about this. I would assume she wouldn't change anything. One, because she didn't need to carry anything in anyway. So like having more there isn't a hindrance to her. Yeah. And like for me, it was like, I thought we took a shitload in and we did. We didn't use 80% of it probably. But if you didn't take it, you'd need it.
Yeah.
Like we had 3 bags. We had 1 bag that stayed in the car, which was kind of like my spare change of clothes if they did let me stay. And I was to have a shower and stuff like that, and food like tuna cans and just like perishables and things like that.
Or your macros.
What's that?
Oh yeah.
Haven't lost weight yet. This thing. Tell Kat that. I just haven't checked in for a week or 2. So we had that stuff there as well. In our suitcase, we had a proper suitcase as if we were traveling overseas, which was close to full. And then we had our labor bag because we assumed that what was going to happen was we were going to get taken into the room that we were going to stay in, and then we would go to the labor room. So we would take our stuff there, and then we would just have our backpack. backpack goes on, we go to the labor room, and then we do our thing, and then we go back to that room where so Tracey had packed it like that. Like the things we didn't need while we were in labor were over here, and the things we did need in labor were in this backpack. And like inside the backpack were like lollies, like kind of like high glucosey foods, things like that. It was oils, heat bags, cold bags, which the hospital kind of had the heat stuff anyway. Essential oils, massage oils, trigger point ball. Like it was nappies, because if baby comes out and you got to dress, it was nappies. It was like an average onesie that it could just sleep in, won't get all gucky and stuff. Singlet. So we had all that stuff. So I don't think that she would change anything. Like we were lucky Bubs didn't wee or poo on any of its own gear. So like we only changed it. We kept, once it was in that stuff, it didn't get changed out of that stuff until we left. And that was when, we wanted the nice photos for her and things like that. Because it turns out you don't bathe babies. Did you know that?
What was that?
You don't bathe babies. You bathe them like once in a blue moon.
Oh, really? I thought that was like the first thing you'd want to do, like after the skin-to-skin contact, is like get all the shit, wash all the shit off.
Supposedly, like you don't wash them for the first 24-ish or 36 hours because the stuff that's on them, you want to stay on them for as long as possible because it's just encouraging good
skin, antibodies and
stuff, like microbiomes and biomes and germs and things. I was listening when we were watching the things.
It had been like 30 hours, yeah.
Yeah, by this stage. So I mean, if you saw and if you had seen how organized, like when Tracey packs a backpack, her suitcase, sorry, if we open the suitcase up imaginarily, on the left-hand side we have all of Tracey's clothes, baby's clothes, things like that. On the right-hand side we have like pads, kind of not as like probably more essential stuff than the clothes and things like that. And so within the left-hand side, which had all the clothes, there was like a bag of Tracey's clothes, a bag of baby's clothes, a bag of, I gotta remember it because she'll kill me otherwise. But it was just so well organized that if we needed something, we could just kind of grab it out. In the baby's bag, we had 2 pairs of socks, 2 onesies that were like, we didn't care if they got dirty. We had 1 onesie that if it was a boy, 1 onesie if it was a girl, like the leaving the hospital outfit. We had I think like you take as much as possible because like as a guy, even though I'll brag, I think I did really well. You really don't do a lot, right? Like if they tell you stop swaying, you stop swaying. If they want something, you just give it to them as best you can. Like every time she had a contraction, we had to do the same thing. I had to hold her hand a particular way, hold the back of her arm a particular way. And then I wasn't allowed to move, basically. I just had to hold her still. And if she moved an inch, she'd be like, don't let me move. I'm like, okay. Like,
that's marriage. Basically marriage.
Basically marriage. Don't move.
Just keep them happy. Do what you're told. That's it.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. And so I think I don't think you need a lot of clothes. I think just the more things you can do that are there to kind of keep Cat happy. Like they had a speaker system in there, but we took our own system so we could play like music that we wanted to listen to. She had so much stuff in there. Probably took us longer to unpack the bag than it did to pack the bag.
Yes, I guess that's like the music and stuff like that. I'm just like, I hadn't even thought of that. So hopefully Cat's kind of like got a handle on this sort of stuff.
I assume most labor rooms will be similarly as equipped as the one we were in. Even though I've heard Frankston is really, really good, I would assume that because they had like a CD player there, but we just took a little MP3 and we also took headphones in case you just didn't want to listen to anybody but her headphones.
Yeah.
But yeah, if I was you, I would do all that stuff anyway. I'd just pack headphones, even if it's just for yourself.
So I can just wait in the, yeah.
Oh, you're just being so loud with you. But you know what was crazy? When we left the room, so a couple times I had to go and heat up the heat bag because they've just got a microwave in the hall that you can use. And so we'd go and heat up the heat bag and the screams from different rooms was like, it was crazy. And I swear I heard, and Tracey reckons that I was right, I heard one of the nurses be like, don't scream like that. You're wasting your breath. Because when you scream like you're in absolute agony and you're not concentrating on the breathing, you're allowed to moan and you're allowed to make noise like that. You're actually getting too far away or you're not being able,
you're getting too stimulated sort of, right?
your adrenaline's starting to kick in too soon, which
Yeah.
could slow the pregnancy down. That fight or flight. But if I was you, like, let her take whatever she wants. It's only going to fit in, like, baby clothes aren't that big.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
I mean, the only thing you need to have, I haven't bought it yet, but I will go and buy soon, is the St Kilda onesie.
Oh, we've got all the S&M onesies lined up.
Yeah, get her to leave the gym in that, to leave the hospital on that.
If they're playing on that day, I will for sure.
That'd be sick.
There's a PS that Bonds are doing a sale right now, and the football onesies are like half price.
Oh, sold.
Yeah.
That's my pen. I wrote it down.
Because we just grabbed because we kind of worked out, okay, August season only runs till like end of September, so that's 0 to 3 months. And then Kat was like, "Oh, I'll get her a 3 to 6 months." I was like, "There's no point. The season doesn't start again until next March, so just get her 6 to 12." So yeah, we got a backup one as well. There you go.
I'll get the first 2 years. It'll be fine.
Yeah. Man, it's so exciting. Like it's been, I guess, for me personally, like such a like the perfect time to be having a kid when you've got like, I think if you were the only person or the first person in like your friendship group to have a child, that would be quite difficult. And not just, for people to use as resources like during, the whole pregnancy and labor, but then I guess immediately after as well, when it's like, socially, especially like yours is only really the circumstances that have changed, right? And it's like all of a sudden you can't just go out for dinner on a Friday night on a whim. Not that you can do that in Melbourne anyway now. But I guess it's been, for me, like it's quite a comforting experience to know that, you guys are a week in. I've just had another friend of ours, I think yesterday, had their second baby boy. Shout out to Jack and Cheska. They're due today, but it looks like Bubs is pretty comfortable, so going to be like a little while longer. And then another friend of mine, Josh and Bree, had another baby boy like 2 weeks ago as well. So it's kind of like everywhere you look at the moment, there's people in that kind of close group that are having kids, right? So I think it's going to be, we're going to have to start that. We're going to have to start that dad's kind of WhatsApp group. I imagine there's going to be a few like 2 a.m. like anyone up? You guys up?
100%. What's funny, like last isolation, I hadn't played my PlayStation in like 2 years, and last isolation, I found myself using it as like my social outlet. Like Friday night or Tuesday night or whatever it was, I would jump on and play with guys that were still working, but they were working from home. So play a couple hours at night. And so we have this kind of like chat and, all these different types of things. But like, I found that like, I started making the joke with these guys. Like I sent them a message at like 2:00 in the morning. "Hey guys, anyone on?" And they're all, only one of them has a kid. His kid, I think, is like 4. So obviously he's sleeping through now like a champion. I think like, it's going to go longer than 6 weeks, this kind of isolation period, which obviously sucks. And I think what my plan is to, over the next 2 weeks, is only do what I kind of need to, for lack of a better term, for the business, as in like, just get people's videos back to them, get the program sorted, like still make people feel supported, but not do the normal above and beyond. Like I normally film tons of extra videos and things like that. And then after that 2 weeks, I think I'll start to find my rhythm with work and really try to prepare for longer than 6 weeks and like make people still feel like they're supported. But I think it's all going to be done at weird hours. Like you're kind of saying, like, I think like I said, I slept till she went hour on the hour, every hour from like 2:00 till 7:00, and then slept from like 7:30 till 11:30. So yesterday morning, I kind of slept through till then. So I think sometimes I just won't go back to sleep if it's just going to be for 2 or 3 hours, and try to like still get my 8 hours, but spread it out over the course of the day, because, lean on knowing there's a couple of other dads out there that are going through pretty much the same thing. Like, hey, who's up? Even if it's just to talk crap, like while you've got a baby on your chest, and try to give, because the other thing as well is when baby's grizzly, it's not like I was expecting the crying to be really
piercing
and really painful. Like, and it does suck. And you don't want them to cry, but at the moment, I look at her when she cries as like she has no form of communication other than sleep and tell me she's upset by crying. So it's just like when she cries, it's like, has she done a diaper? No. Is she ready to be fed? Yes or no. And is she cold or hot? They're the only 3 things that we can kind of think of. And like sometimes now it's starting to get like, does she just want attention? And if she just wants attention, I just pop her on my chest. And then like, so if that's the case, like I can find myself, I reckon, in the coming weeks when a young Benjamin Borg has his daughter
Ben Ball.
messaging back and forwards about how you're Benjamin when you're a father. I'm now Christopher. How we're going to take over the world.
Yeah, I think we should both watch Daddy Daycare. Maybe there's an idea in that.
Daddy Daycare. What's one I watched? I watched one yesterday. I put on my story. Big Daddy.
Daddy. Yeah.
I was taking notes. This is really interesting. I wipe my own ass. Okay, how to get Scarlett to wipe her own ass? Can I get that to do that before she's 6 months?
Speaking of, mate, how are you? How was first nappy? How was that as a first experience? How's that been?
Everything's fine at the moment because there's no smell.
Yeah.
They don't smell yet. They've only just started kind of a little smell, and everyone's really been like, "Whoa, just you wait, buddy."
That's the other thing I wonder too is like, how much of like what you hear, like how much does it get built up? Not like, I don't want to say, oh, people like build it up and hype it up. But like how much of it is like this anticipation that it's going to be so sleep deprived and so crazy and babies crying all the time. And it's like, how much of that is like, oh God, now I'm just waiting for all that to happen. And how much of it is like, yeah, they're just trying to settle and like, you know, blah, blah, blah. And
I think the hard part is that like, I'm 6 days in and it's like, this isn't too bad. If
it's
this
like,
kept up for 14 more months, that'd be a very different Christopher standing in front of you right now. Like there's a couple of people at our gym at the moment that have kids ranging from like 1 to 2 years old. And one of them, I think her daughter's like 18 months and they've only just started, they've had 1 week of kind of normal sleep in the last 18 months.
Yeah.
So like, I think like, it's like anything. You throw a lack of sleep into anything and something that was kind of hard becomes excruciatingly hard.
Yeah.
And it could be the simplest of tasks.
Yeah, for sure. And I know that like, again, from what I've heard, it's like the first 3 months is like this sense of false security, right? Where it's like,
yeah,
it's like actually they're sleeping pretty well right now relative to what they'll do in months.
What they can do.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing is like, once she settles, she'll go down. Like she'll go down for half hour or so, which is better than like, I know some people who it's like, that baby is up until the sun comes up and you just have to kind of deal with it.
Yeah. I mean, look, every baby's going to be different too, right? And it's always going to be like your kind of perspective and how, you know, your attitude, like going in and, you know, dealing with it. But yeah, look, I think for us in particular, like Kat and I are, you know, fortunate in the fact that we do have quite a decent level of command, like over our client list or over our calendar really too, right? So the times that we, and like the majority of our clients we've been working for an extended period, they all know there's a baby coming and we've been able to have like super frank conversations with being like, look, this is our availability up until August, but obviously like pending baby's arrival and, you know, there's obviously going to be a lot of shuffling around with availability while we kind of get the hang and kind of find out a little bit of a routine surrounding like the new edition. And like, yeah, of course, you know, like expected, right? So like I imagine it would be a very different experience. Like if we had a baby for 2 weeks and I was like, oh, okay, cool. I don't really get paternity leave from work. So I'm going to leave the house now for like 8 to 10 hours. I'll see when I get back and then get back tired from a day at work and Kat just being like, it's your turn, like your shift.
Yeah. So. And the thing is like, I actually didn't think, I didn't think it was going to be, I wouldn't say as hard, but because obviously my original plan was, before isolation happened was Grace was going to take the classes that she could take and then whatever she couldn't, I had reached out to a couple coaches I got a lot of respect for help, but I didn't want to lean on people too much. So my plan was to work potentially a full day on a Monday or at least half of a day on a Monday classes wise. And then a couple of other classes throughout the week, still much less hours, but I was planning on doing that from anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks or 4 weeks, whatever it was. So then that way I still got some form of paternity leave, but I also didn't want it like, cause I always had somebody yourself was like, oh, the first 2 weeks are nothing. Like first 2 week baby just sleeps and feeds. But when people said sleep and feed, I didn't think sleep and feed every 2 or 3 hours. So I just assumed it was going to be actually quite a little bit easier for Tracey. But it is definitely like hats off to anyone who does that on their own because it is definitely a 2-person job with like, because Tracey's obviously the milk lady So once she's done feeding, if she was then to change the nappy, soothe, tuck her in, she'd be operating on little to no sleep at all
Yeah.
during that on the hour type hour thing. Whereas at least like she'll wake up, she'll feed, I'll stay asleep while she's feeding unless she needs me to grab something for her. And then she'll wake me kind of, if I've not woken up by this stage, I'll take baby and that's sometimes she'll do the nappy as well. Cause she's just like, if I'm in a deep sleep, she'll try and let me sleep. But having that ability to kind of bounce off each other has been quite beneficial. So yeah, that's what I mean. That this isolation things kind of in handy, and I think I will take that first 2 weeks to figure out how I will work around it kind of going forward. But yeah, I think another thing is I've had a mate of mine who, when he had his kid, they had a couple of complications post birth, and like you can only do what you can kind of do. And I think in the businesses that we've got, like there's only so far it will go. But we're very lucky in that like our community want the best for us. So it's not like, because we're quite small, it's not like it's 1,000 strong and people are like, what the hell? Why isn't he here? I'm paying all this money. People are like, as long as they feel like they're looked after. Plus, people from our community feel like it's their baby too. Like they are so excited for us. Like the general outpour of support, including from you guys, we got a package from you, which I've been meaning to talk to you about yesterday. So you'll get a photo in the next probably 24 hours with Bubs wearing some sweet merchandise. So like the general outpour, like when we got home from the hospital, there was already stuff inside because my mum had kind of gone inside and cleaned the house and kind of pressed it, and Tracey's mum had gone in and kind of tied it up a little bit. So there was already like flowers and gifts and things on the dining table. At the front door, there were like gifts, flowers, cards. There was so much stuff there. Over the course of the next 24 hours, even more was dropped off. Food was dropped off. People bought us food. People paid for pre-packaged food. Like the general support has been like, look, I haven't cooked a meal. Actually, we cooked steaks on Saturday night. Other than that, or whatever night it was, I can't remember now. What day is it? Tuesday night.
No, today's Friday.
Is today Friday?
Today's Friday.
No, it's not.
Yeah, it is.
Tomorrow's Saturday. Far out.
I know I haven't slept since Wednesday.
Yeah. Last night's probably been the hardest one, but yeah, like the general outpouring has been so amazing, and I think like you can't take it for granted, but like that first week or two, I've been sending people videos just at random hours, and I've been slowly catching up to it because obviously from like Wednesday night to Monday there was nothing, which for me that's a long time for me to go without sending videos. So there was like 100 videos or something to kind of go through, and not one person. Everyone was like, "What are you doing? Sending us videos? Like, chill, like hang out with your baby." Like it's been awesome. So I do look forward to like getting back in and kind of working through the second isolation period and helping people. But it's been probably this last week has been probably one of the coolest weeks in terms of like not having to worry. Like if we hadn't been put into isolation, the first isolation pushed us back in terms of I just didn't organize enough. I felt like I was leaving Grace even unprepared, our coach at Iron Tribe. I felt like I was leaving her unprepared. When I told her, hey, Grace, just a heads up, we're going into potentially labor. I think within the space of 12 hours, I got a message back from her saying, okay, these classes are covered. This is happening. I'll take them over the Zoom class, this and that. She was even logging into my True Coach and sending video feedback to those people who she knew would really, really appreciate it. So it was, it's just a whirlwind it doesn't even feel like 6 days. I feel like I've known her my whole life now.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's crazy. I feel like I even know her personality. She doesn't even open her eyes yet.
I mean, look, and we've had a little bit of a chat as well. The last episode we did was more of like a business focused one, but it is kind of that sort of test where it's like, we've talked a lot about like getting, the real test of how well you set structures and systems and stuff into place is kind of being able to step away for a little bit and things don't all fall in a heap, right?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, look, I know for us, like even, the reason that we like wanted to start our own business and the reason we want that business to do well and be successful essentially is like, it's like a legacy to kind of, you know, whether it be hand over or include or to provide for the family. It's like, okay, well, the reason like we've, you know, been working so hard and doing all this now, like literally like right in the palm of your hand.
Yeah, 100%. And it's kind of funny you mentioned that. What? I've got something. Give me 2 seconds. I should message him. I think he's a bit of a flog, but
Jace.
a couple of years ago, I did I signed up to like a mentorship thing, and the only beneficial thing that kind of came out of it was the initial chat with the person. Oh my God. And so I will have to, here you go. I'll turn it over. So worthy, it was kind of like your worthy ideals. It was like write on a card and forget about it. Put it in your wallet. So this is in my old wallet actually. Like, and actually you can see it's kind of actually like separated.
Yeah.
And so on this is like I think it was like 5 things. And so, what's your worthy ideal? Like, why are you creating this business for? And so the 5 were, Mine Tribe has a great culture, which I think we do. I'm super proud of the culture that we have. And I obviously continue to strive to make it even better, but which is like what I think gyms should do is they should never rest on there. Like, oh, we had a really good culture for about 4 minutes. So that was the first one. The next one is money.
Yeah, go on.
The next one is money is not an issue, which we definitely haven't got to that stage yet. But like my, I suppose like what I need money for has kind of changed even since I wrote this, in that like I don't need a hell of a lot of money. Like I definitely have like things I really want, like new camera lenses and things like that. But like I can definitely go without, especially now that I've got a daughter. Like what I need is like very little. The next one was work-life balance, continued education, and then start a legacy. And so like all 5 of those things have not necessarily been accomplished yet, but like I remember writing them down, being like, this guy's such a dickhead. I'll do it, but I don't believe in it. And then like, and this was like 5 years ago. So I didn't have a gym, still working for somebody, working probably, I want to say more hours than what I was working now, but I don't know. I can't even remember now. But like, so yeah, I think like that start a legacy thing, I think is huge, is because like even now, like while I'm sitting on the couch and being like, you know, looking forward to getting back to work, I'm also like, okay, how do I set it up so that it is sustainable in the long term. We do have like a place where the people do feel like they're a part of our family, like the tribe. We put it in the name for a reason. So yeah, I don't know. It's I don't know. Everyone says like, oh, you'll have less time when you have a kid. I think I'll have less time. I definitely know I'll have less time, but I also know how much time I was wasting before. Like I was not an efficient man. So I think like now, I think I'll actually be more productive, for lack of a better term.
I think it's like not so much that, you know, you have more or less time, but more than just like your priorities change too, right?
Yeah.
Like it's like, well, now you've got a ton of motivation to like get the shit done that you need to get done, because like you want to get home and be with your kid, right?
My kid.
And Trace.
100%.
You know?
Yeah.
So yeah, dude. It's I don't know, like when you go, you ever been for a job interview and like, oh, where do you see yourself in the next 5 years, right? And I always thought like especially when you ask someone in their like early 20s that question, like what a fucking stupid question. Like who knows?
Yeah, it's a quarter of their life.
Yeah, and it's like if you can answer that, like it's almost like it's a trick question. Like if you think you can answer that, like that is like that's sad, man, that you think you know exactly where you're going to be in 5 years. But I think even now it's like you start to do all these things, like you get a house and you have a kid, and it's like, oh, I think I'm starting to like get a pretty good idea of like where things are going to be in 5 years in some areas. But equally, like it's, I think that I think the next 5 years, like Kat's super excited for like a newborn phase, but I'm really super excited for that like toddlery stage, like starting to speak, they're starting to get some attitude, they can start to like formulate ideas, like that kind of like that's the sort of like when I think about having kids, like that's always kind of the area that I've been like but by the time
I was actually saying the exact same thing. I'll say the same thing you were saying 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Now I just don't want this part to end, because not that I'm worried that they'll be a little smart ass, or because I know they will be, because have a bit of me and a bit of Tracey in them. But I understand what people who have had kids before me when they're like, don't wish away that first 12 months.
Yeah.
Because that first 12 months, although like, yeah, you get the instant feedback when you're talking to them because they know an extra word. They're literally like, right now she can't see, obviously it's all shadows and whatever, but in the last 5 days, she's gone from opening her eyes a glint for 10 minutes a day to like at 2:00 in the morning last night, looking into her eyes in the dark for like an hour. Like, and this morning, like she was crazy active. Like she will never be that little on your chest again.
Yeah.
And that's where it's like, I was the same as you. I was like, I can't wait for her to be Ella's age. Like, I think I even mentioned that when we did our baby shower video. They asked me a bunch of questions. I was like, what are you looking forward to the most? I was like, I'm looking forward to the most when I can start having a bit of banter with the kid, like, like mucking around with them. I reckon you'll change. You'll change. You'll be like, oh my God. Like,
I guess the sticking point there is though, like by the time they're at the point where they're formulating and stuff like that, like they've already learned so much, right? And when you talk about, or what actual legacy is, it's having to always be like setting the example and be like following through on like what you want your kids to understand as like ideals and principles and stuff like that, right? Because so much of it is not what you say and what they hear and what you try to teach them, but really like what you demonstrate like every day, always watching.
Sure.
So yeah, dude, I'm pumped. I'm so excited for you guys, and you know, I'm obviously pretty excited for us as well. And I think COVID notwithstanding and some of the regulations getting lifted, I think it's going to be a really different but really cool like end of year Christmas parties this year.
Yeah. The other thing as well is like what we had some advice from the nurses when we were in there was that like this COVID thing is actually really beneficial for first time parents because people aren't allowed to just help themselves and come into your room. You don't have 15 people standing around while mum's barely walking properly, like, because you just don't know how the birth's going to go, right? We could have had an episiotomy, and even though we didn't have an episiotomy, Tracey still had a tear, and he's still crazy sore.
Yeah.
And that's 5 days later. You can imagine like 2 minutes afterwards, if you've just had a kid and people are bringing in your firstborn or they're bringing in aunties and uncles, I think it's a very, unless you've been asked to be there, I think it's a very, now looking at it, I didn't think there was anything wrong with it, but I definitely agree. Like that first 2 or 3 hours after Bubs was there was such a good time for us and baby, as well as for us to rest. If people had rolled in, we were up for 30 hours at that stage. So I just, it's been really, really beneficial. And I think that is another positive out of this whole COVID thing is you don't get visitors going to the hospital. If you want someone at your house, technically they have to be a carer, which is fine because your mum can be there because she's technically a carer because you need, everyone wants their mum there. So having them at home was fine. But like when we were talking about in the hospital, being like, fuck, thank God we didn't have a shitload of people here. I know everyone's different and there are some people that will be like, hell's yeah, I want my whole family there. But seeing how uncomfortable Tracey was and hers wasn't potentially as bad as some others, I could not imagine people just rolling in, just help, you know what I mean? It just feels odd now looking at it. Yeah. And they reckon that the nurses even said to Tracey when I wasn't there that they've not seen first-time mums this relaxed. Even with the stresses of being a first-time mum in a room by themselves with a baby, they're more relaxed than when they've got in-laws and their parents and
well, of course, like the other things that you're stressing about don't get reduced because there's 10 other people in the room, right? Like they get high.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So I think that's something that like, that's something that is another, just always looking for the positives, right? Like what are the positives kind of coming out of this? And I think that's another kind of big one too. And then you can literally choose who you want at your house because technically they need to be essential, especially as before if it does go stage 4. It's not stage 4. Looks like mum's going to move into the your house.
Into the office. Yeah.
Which is, you might as well for everyone's sake, right? Like, I think, it's been cool. Like everyone was worried. Like we had a lot of really concerned people, like in positive ways about oh, it sucks. It's COVID and all type of stuff. And yeah, for me, having to not be there till 1 o'clock on one of the days was a bit of a pain in the butt, but it wasn't too bad all in all. Everything else was actually everything's been so nice so far. And then we've had our mums over on separate occasions to help with the house and to help with food and to help with, which has just been huge. And no one else is allowed over just yet because of restrictions. So it's kind of been nice. We are getting to the point where, okay, it'd be really cool to have siblings and, cousins and stuff over. But it's just, you just got to do what you're told at the moment.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And that's like baby's health too, right? Like every antibody is like new antibody, right? So
yeah. Well, they say like, I don't even know. When do they get the next lot of injections? 6 weeks or something?
Yeah, so 5 weeks, 6 weeks or something.
Everyone that comes over would have to have had whooping cough anyway, which so but it's been like, I'm excited for you, man. It's definitely something that you couldn't picture in your mind's eye if you tried.
Yeah, good. We'll have to do a catch-up episode
after.
I'll be like, you lied to me about this. You lied to me about
I'll interview you. How about that? We'll do it on your podcast and I'll ask all the questions.
Yeah, sounds good.
Welcome to the More to My Macros podcast. Chris Ackland, your host here, talking about all things Chris Ackland. And I suppose we'll listen to Ben Borg about his baby.
Probably be the highest ever listened to podcast episode of the podcast.
Yeah, 100%, yeah. All the combined listeners, because everyone's only here for you anyway. So if you combine everyone that's listened to any podcast, it makes for one big Ben Borg podcast.
I was actually thinking of, funny, like mentioned before about having that messaging kind of dad's group of almost trying to do like a monthly kind of dad's podcast and just be like, all right, like, just a couple of dads chatting about being new dads, basically.
Yeah.
And seeing what kind of response that got, whether or not we gave it another season. Here's Kat.
Yes.
Quickly to Ackers.
Hey, Kat, come onto the podcast.
Yeah.
So
hey, big mama.
If you've listened to it all the way through, I guess now you get like the sneak peek at Kat and the bump, pretty close too.
Yeah.
Because I was on video.
Yeah. So
very dressed
so
up.
exciting. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, mate. Well, thank you so much for finding the
Thanks for having me.
Even more precious as usual. And yeah, hopefully it's not too long, mate, before we can have the bubs meet and go down next to each other.
They'll probably be meeting at their first jiu-jitsu class.
That's it. Couple of besties, BFFs, mate.
Yeah. That's it. Straight up world champs.
Yeah, they got those like no kneecaps and no elbows right at this stage, so they'd be impossible.
They bent so much. The other day I was like, oh my god, did I just break her arm? Oh no, it's fine. It goes that way.
They wouldn't need to tap.
She didn't tap. It's her own damn fault. Yeah.
All right, thank you so much, mate, and big hugs to Trace for us, and obviously to Scarlett now as well.
Yeah, man, she's gorgeous. I look forward to meeting your bubs.
And look forward to eventually receiving some of those 100 videos that you've got on the phone. Oh,
I've got to come to Tracey's. I'm actually, maybe today or tomorrow, I've got to cut together every video that we've filmed through the pregnancy. So that'll be fun.
Sounds like a 3 a.m. job.
It does, eh?
Yeah,
it does. Not some sleep.
All right, awesome. Okay, buddy, thank you so much.
Cheers, guys. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks for having me.
Cheers, mate.